Okay, so remember on this image that the back of the hair here is not what we're going to use. So I can just go ahead now and paint that out of my layer mask. So just with a black brush, just go ahead and paint that out real quick, because I don't want to have to worry about any of this. If there's something you know you don't need to deal with, then just remind yourself that you don't need to deal with it, because I've spent way too many hours accidentally going through and editing out elements, or like cutting out elements or something like that, that I ended up not needing to use. And I just, like, when you're in it and you're cutting out this image, you forget that you don't need the back of the hair there if you're like just going through piece by piece. So if I cut it out now, I can just remind myself and save myself a lot of time. So apply that if you're as stupid as I am. Okay, next we're going to, let's look at the hair options we have here. So we have, let's see, so we have this hair, which is his face. Yeah, so let's go and work on that now. Okay, so we have Andrew face. Before we size it down, let's cut it out using the same method as before. So we'll go to channels. Select the blue channel, shift click to load that as a selection, create a layer mask out of that, Control I to invert the layer mask, Control M to add a curve. And now we can really help this in a big way here. So I'll turn on, before I add the curve, I'll turn on this pink background layer, Control M to add a curve. Now I can really see what I'm doing. So my focus here is this area. So all of this down to the bottom of the neck here, and then about halfway back with his hair. We don't want all this hair that's hanging down. We want somewhere in there to cut it out. So let's bring these in like we did before. There we go. Zoom in here to see how it's looking. So you can see here specifically that this isn't fully masked out, right? It's showing some of the background. But if I go too far here, masking that out, then I'm overdoing it up here. So my main focus for this will be up here because I want a lot of detail in this area. Do something like that for my curve. Not super worried about the face. That'll be a lot easier to cut out. So click OK. Okay, so let's take a look at this now with the different backgrounds. See, it's doing a pretty good job. I mean, that cut that hair out really easily for us. We didn't have to do very much work at all, but we do need to do some work at refining the selection because it's not what we want it to be. First of all, we need his face to show up. So let's alt-click on this. Go to Dodge. We'll target the midtones, and then we'll just paint this up. So use my paintbrush here. Maybe we need to target the shadows, or the highlights. There we go, target the highlights. That'll make it a lot faster. And then go near the edge, but don't go all the way to the edge quite yet. Okay, and this line here, we actually want the cutout to be here because we have that other element that's similar to this in the in the arms layer that we're putting this on. So we will cut it right here at this line where I'm drawing right now. So don't try to add any more past that line. The shirt will be where the cut happens. Then we'll get closer to the edge up here. And because the edge isn't fully black, it is being lightened up a little as we go over it. So we'll need to go back over with the burn tool. Make sure the nose is fully in. Okay, so yeah, let's go with the burn tool. Get rid of this area here. And darken it, I guess is what I should say. We want to do that same thing right here over his clothes. So we want those gone. Sounded weird. Okay. Do that on this side as well. Then I'll go to my dodge tool again and lighten up. I'll just bring it down into here a little bit. I'm not sure exactly what's going on here, what we want. Is that like his Adam's apple? No, that's cloth. Is that cloth? Turn off the layer mask to look. Oh, okay, so we want that line to be brought in a little bit here. So just with the paintbrush, I'll just paint that out. Okay, and then we'll go about right down here and then cut that out as well. Now what we can do is just with the lasso tool, we'll go around everything that we don't want. So just right in here, here. Select all of that, and then with like a brush, just bring the size of the brush up a lot. You can just paint it out. But with that selection, we can only work within that selection, so we won't accidentally paint anything over here. And then we'll go back to the lasso tool and do that again on this side. So we'll go just above what we need here. Everything out of there. Go back to that paintbrush and do the same thing. Okay. Now let's go back in here. Okay, so we need to dodge out more of these areas. So we'll just, or burn, sorry. Burn out more of those areas, so we'll do that now. And with something like this, like hair, so on this side it doesn't matter because this is not going to be in our composite. But you don't want to go too harsh with it because you get weird little artifacts in your selection that don't look like strands of hair but look like clusters of pixels. So bring your exposure down and just do multiple passes. Just go easy on it. Usually you want to start from the outside and then go more in. So like I overdid it there. There was a lot of little hair detail here that I kind of cut out too much of. Let's bring the exposure down a little again. And we can bring our brush size down. And then just preserve what we want to preserve. Mask out what we want to mask out. And little brush strokes as you paint will help us get a better result with this technique. Okay, anything south of here doesn't really matter to me because it's not going to be in our composite. You do want to make sure you're getting out this stuff in between the hair. That's not actually hair, but it's just your background showing through. So there are times when you do want to just get rid of some more stuff, I guess. Yeah, so this is a good example of that. In here, all this little stuff is not all hair, some of it's background. So we really need to get in there. This is so fun. When I first discovered this type of stuff that you can do in Photoshop, I think that's when I really got hooked. It's like, wow, you can cut out like individual strands of hair. It's so cool, and you can do so much with these techniques. You can apply them in different ways, and it's so much fun to like get creative with it. And like, what else could I do? Because we learned this in one way, right? In one setting, which is cutting out a subject from the background. Now we're focusing on hair, cutting out their hair. But there's like an infinite number of ways that this could be applied that only you can go out and discover. So that's kind of the point of this course, is that as you learn these techniques in certain applications, remember the tools you're learning, but try to apply them in different ways. Be creative with it. It doesn't even have to be photography. You know, you could do this for, I don't know, a number of different art forms using Photoshop. And it's so much fun when you kind of know a little bit more about what you're doing to then play around. Because playing around in Photoshop, I don't want to make it sound like a bad thing. That's how you learn Photoshop. You just shouldn't play around blindly, because you'll just start playing around with stuff and maybe using tools incorrectly or in a way that's not really beautiful. So learn the tools and then go out and do whatever you want. If you learn anything from this class, it's that. And that applies to everything in life. Okay. I'm gonna get out some of this stuff. Just paint around here, make sure it's good. And now let's go back to our normal view, take a look at that hair. Now that looks awesome. So now what we can do, it's not perfect yet, right? But it looks great. It's still looking a little, I don't know what. We can go through and blur some areas on the mask. So go do that now. Oops. Blur tool. Bring it up. Bring the strength down. You go through, like this is what I'm talking about. These areas that just look pixelated, that's not what hair looks like, right? You don't want it to look like that. If you go through and blur this, it'll usually help you still get the general effect you want without that clustered pixel look. Down here is pretty bad. It's great because like you're using the blur tool, but you're not using it on your image, you're using it on a layer mask. I would rarely ever use the blur tool on an actual layer. On pixels that are going to be seen in my image, I don't know if I've ever done that. But I've used them in this way, or I've used that tool in this way many times. Okay, and up here is looking pretty good actually. Great, so that's how we can use channels to cut out hair in Photoshop.